Dmitry Muratov, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, says no one would dare to publish this book in today's Russia. And if it happens, if it appears in Russian bookstores, it could mean a change of the regime. Why would the Kremlin dislike this book so much?
No, actually, Dmitry Muratov is a prophet because he wrote that that phrase before it was published in Russian and before this book was officially labeled as the threat to national security. So now there is the official decision that anyone who is trying to bring this book to Russia will be stopped at the border, and the book should be confiscated.
So the question is why?
And even more, I was sentenced to 8.5 years in absentia, and obviously the real reason for that is this book, because this book debunks historical myths that Putin is using to justify the war. Obviously, in today's Russia, history is one of the most important cornerstones of the propaganda, and it's a very old story, and there has been the historical propaganda in Russia for many centuries, and Putin is trying to use that. And by this book, I explain why those historical myths were not true, and I tell the story of how they were created.
Are you allowed to go to Russia right now?
I'm sentenced to 8.5 years in jail, so obviously I'm allowed to go directly to prison. So if I go there, I will be in prison for 8.5 years.
Your previous book, All the Kremlin's Men, was pretty written in Bucha, Ukraine, at your friend Nadia's house. Today Nadia doesn't speak to you. What is the reason of that?
You know, we all know that the Ukrainians have very different feelings, and many Ukrainians cannot talk to Russians, and cannot just change their perception of Russians as such. It's very different on a personal level.
Yeah?
You know, I had so many Ukrainian friends. Just to tell you the truth, among all of my Ukrainian friends, she's the new Ukrainian. She moved from Moscow to Ukraine like 10 years ago, and she has become Ukrainian, but she's originally Russian. So her emotions they could be slightly different from emotions of many people I know. So I can tell you that I didn't lose any connection with any of my friends from Ukraine. I interviewed a lot of people for this book. I keep on being in touch with most of them. At the same time, I do understand that many Ukrainians are hurt in that way, so they cannot and they will not talk to Russians. And I don't think that we need to impose ourselves. We need to respect that kind of feeling. It's emotion. It's not only emotions. But it's really tough psychologically.
But from this point of view, it means that there are some good Russians for Ukrainian people.
You know, I prefer not to use that word. Good Russians is like that's a very complicated label, and we don't need it. I interviewed President Zelensky in March 2022, and I organized the only interview of President Zelensky to Russian media, and it was in Russian for Russian audience, and it was very clear, and he said that he wanted to unify everyone to support Ukraine and to struggle against Putin's regime. So I think that, and for example, I remember when I moved from Russia to Germany. I used to live in Berlin after moving from Moscow, and Chancellor Scholz, I had a conversation with him, and he said that Germany is willing to support anyone who is fighting against Putin's regime, no matter what's their nationality. So I think that's important. It's important that a lot of people are unified in support of Ukraine, in their sincere desire of Ukrainian victory. So, and there is no need to put any additional labels on those people, on us.
Let's go to the current events. American and also Polish media have summarized President Zelensky's peace plan and summarized also the visit in United States, and they agree that it's a failure. Who doesn't want this peace, or why it was a failure?
You know, I'm 100% sure that Vladimir Putin doesn't want any kind of peace, and he doesn't need the peace. He loves the war, and actually the way how the war is going on is not the way as he expected. And in this book, I tell the story how this war was prepared and what
it's supposed to be like 3 days war.
Yeah, and he truly believed in that. He
kind of blitzkrieg.
Yes, he was fed by a lot of misinformation by his Ukrainian agents like Viktor Medvedchuk, but he truly believed that it would be like that. But even though it didn't happen, he started loving this war because it unified the country. It made him very sure that he controls the whole Russia till the end of this war. He got rid of more than 1.5 million people, like not all, but some of the most active opinion leaders, activists who were opposing him had to leave the country. He criminalized journalism in the country. So he created the best conditions for him, and it's clear that as long as the war goes, it's like the easiest way how to suppress the population of Russia. So in that meaning, I mean, that's for him, that's not the war for Ukraine, that's the war for Russia. And he needs it to be continued. And I think even though Russian economy is suffering, even though many people in Russia want members of the government, not ordinary people, not only ordinary people. They want to have negotiations, and they want the war to be at least temporarily stopped. I'm sure that Putin doesn't need the peace. He needs just the pause. He needs to have short break, and he would be ready to relaunch it again as he once did it in 2015.
But can you see any person, any country around the world that have like good idea for the peace in Ukraine and Russia? Is President Zelensky the person who should provide this plan, or any outside of country leaders?
You know, I'm afraid that it's very hard to make the peace if the country that is the aggressor doesn't want it. I cannot think of that, how it's possible to make the peace, like okay, there is...
So with Putin it's not possible?
There is a murderer with a knife or with an axe who wants to kill other people, and you are approaching to him telling that, okay, there is a peace plan, but he's got the knife and he wants to murder. So I do not believe in possibility of the real peace while he's alive.
Don't you think that the Western reaction, or rather lack of reaction or response to the annexation of Crimea was like the kind of green light for Vladimir Putin and for Russia?
I think it's more complicated. It's not only one factor. There are a lot of factors that led to that. A lot of factors before 2014, and many more factors after that. Yes, I think he was sure before that he will manage to get away with anything. And the way how negotiations, like so-called Minsk process, was organized, the fact that U.S. didn't participate, the outcome of the Minsk negotiations. It was in a way kind of sign for him that okay, it's possible. It was not the only reason. I don't think that it was 100% predetermined, but it was one of the major factors, and it was completely forgotten. It was. I remember I was in Moscow during the final match of the FIFA World Cup in 2018. It was after Crimea, and then it was like the beautiful celebration, and President Macron was at the stadium in Moscow, and I guess no one remembered about Ukraine those days.
In your book, it's just a short paragraph about it, but in Polish-Ukrainian relations, it's a major chapter, we can say, the role of Stefan Bandera. And the Volhynia massacre is really the only thing that divides right now Polish people and Ukrainian people. Do you see any possibility of reconciliation here? For Ukrainians, Bandera, of course, is a hero, for most of them, I think. For us, it's a murderer who, army, let's say, killed Polish people, among others, also my grandmother. Can you see any possibility of reconciliation here?
You know, I think that it's hard for me as an outsider to give any advice to Polish people or Ukrainian people, and I wrote this book as the Russian author. That's why it's not the book about Ukraine; it's the book about Russia. It's the book about Russian Empire and how Russian Empire dealt with Ukraine, and how Russian historians created those historical myths that helped Russian Empire to suppress other nations, including to suppress Poland during the era of Russian Empire, and to suppress Ukrainians. So, in the last chapter about Bandera, for me the main focus is how the myth of Bandera was described in the Soviet press, how it was started, how it was related to the previous myths, because he was not the first figure that symbolized for Russia to be the arch enemy. Before that, Simon Petlura was the leader of early 20th century. Before that, Hetman Ivan Mazepa had the same role. So Russia has always had one main enemy among Ukrainians, and Bandera has become that symbolic figure, and that's his role in Russian history. I think that it's very complicated figure. He was, for many Ukrainians, he doesn't look as a war criminal because he spent most of the time of the Second World War in the concentration camp. He was not personally involved in most of the tragic events. But I guess that's up to, like, I think the more history is examined, studied, and discussed, the open conversation is the only possibility. Like we all need to accept the tragic parts of our histories. I think I'm not here to lecture you. I think that we must start with us, and like Russian society has to accept the fact that our history is sometimes horrible, and we have to accept that. I guess that many nations sometimes face the same challenges.
You are a writer, you are the author of this book, but you are also, first of all, you are a journalist. How do you summarize the state of modern Russian media?
It's very easy, you know. We had quite a lot of very high quality independent media, but approximately after 2014, before 2022, they moved to internet. All the traditional newspapers, all the traditional TV channels were exterminated, and so all the high-quality independent journalists had to work online. They were creating news websites, YouTube channels, Telegram channels, all kind of, and it was very successful. And a lot of Russians started consuming the information from the internet. And then in 2022, journalism was banned, was criminalized, and a lot of people, like the whole media industry, thousands of people had to move outside of Russia. So now there is Russian independent media working from Warsaw, Riga, Vilnius, Berlin, Amsterdam, and they are very important. Obviously, they're so, because that's some kind of new phenomena. Because we know that millions of Russians live in different countries of the world. Russian diaspora has become much bigger than it was 3 years ago. But there is some kind of new quality of that compared to Russian diaspora that fled Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. Because now there is some kind of social institution that unifies all those Russians, no matter where they live, in Argentina or in Thailand. They read the same news, they watch the same media in exile. So those independent media matter, and a lot of people inside of Russia.
So in this context, why Russian propaganda is so powerful? If Russian people can have access to all these independent
Russian people
media,
have access.
So why Russian propaganda is so powerful?
You know, I don't think that I don't think that what's happening in Russia is the result of Russian propaganda. What's happening in Russia is the result of Russian security apparatus. Is the result of the fact that everyone knows that speaking out means that you go to jail. You are going to be arrested for standing with a blank sheet of paper. That's the reason. And at the same time, a lot of people, Karl Marx used to write that working class is the driver of the revolution because it has nothing to lose except for its chains. A lot of Russians have a lot to lose, and they prefer not. They prefer to pretend that nothing is happening. That's like apathy. Trying to be apolitical. That happens. It's not the specific Russian feeling. It's tragic that a lot of Russians are scared that they cannot that they chose to be like that. But at the same time, I do remember. When I lived in Russia, I remember that I had that feeling that many people consider them feel like they are hostages, like as if Russia was hijacked by a group of terrorists. Mm-hmm. It's hard to imagine hostages uprising against the terrorists.
The Polish government informs us like almost every day or even like every week for sure that Russians' influence on our politics, on our politicians, and to also polarize Polish society. What is this information for Vladimir Putin? How important is that? What goals does he achieve through this way?
When I was writing the book you mentioned, All the Kremlin's Men, it was published several years ago, and that's the story of Putin's inner circle and how they got to this point, to this war against the whole world. I remember I was interviewing one of the high-ranking Russian top bureaucrats, and that was 2013, before the current war. And he was somehow telling me that probably in 2014, the year of the anniversary of the First World War, he was expecting the Third World War to start. And I was really shocked by that forecast. And he started explaining to me, and he said something like that, that Putin understands that if Russia continues to compete with the West according to the rules, just economically, it will lose. It's doomed to lose if it obeys all the rules. So the only outcome, according to Putin, is not to follow the rules, not to play chess, but to turn over the chessboard, just to break all the rules, to create chaos. And that's the possibility that he thought is the only possibility for Russia. So yeah, creating chaos is the strategy for many years. Yeah, obviously that's the way. And propaganda, I think it's much more powerful outside of Russia, because that's the real way how he can create chaos.
So Brexit or U.S. election is these are only one of the examples of that.
You know, I don't think that Russians chose Donald Trump in 2016 as American president. I think American citizens did a great job. I saw
without any Russian influence. How about Brexit? Maybe that's a better example.
You know, I don't have
any proofs.
I don't have proper statistics. We think that you know, I saw a lot of Russian propagandists.
Because here in Poland we have a lot of propaganda against Ukrainians, for example, and we have some proofs that this is from Russia.
I think that could be right. I believe in that. I don't think that Russian propaganda should be, you know, idealized. It shouldn't be overestimated. They are not geniuses. Their goal is to earn money. Sometimes they love when they are demonized, and they love when they are blamed for something they didn't do, because that helps them to earn money. The more so that's the way how they work. They pretend that they are super powerful, and that
but they are not.
That helps them to steal new budgets. But I guess trying to make that kind of atmosphere to support anti-Ukrainian opinions in Poland, that's something that they would obviously do. Or trying to support anti-LGBT talks in Europe or in America. Trying to support the new idea, which is super popular in Russian propaganda, is that the United States should break up. That after these presidential elections, it should be some kind of USSR 0.2, and I don't know, Texas and California would become independent states. So, and they are trying to support all those narratives. I don't think that it's possible that they could be really successful, but are they contributing in creating chaos? Yeah, obviously.
Let's go back to Ukraine. How much longer will Volodymyr Zelensky remain the undisputed leader of Ukraine? Like, I'm asking from the perspective from ordinary people, Ukrainian people perspective. I'm
not Ukrainian. I don't live in Ukraine. I cannot answer that question because, you know, I haven't been to Ukraine since 2022. I was few weeks before the beginning of invasion, and the only thing I can tell you is that that's very important political, ideological gap between Zelensky and, for example, Putin. Because Putin is the leader of the Soviet generation. He spent most of his life in the Soviet Union. He was 40 when Soviet Union collapsed, so like, even till now, the biggest part of his life he spent in the Soviet Union. And Zelensky is the first leader of Ukraine who is 100% not Soviet. He spent most of his life after the collapse of Soviet Union, so He has completely different mentality. He's from another planet, and that makes him so special. He's the first leader Russia has never had so far, not Soviet leader. So that's why Zelensky is so mentally far from Putin. And yes, he managed to become that kind of undisputed leader because he's not the only one. He just has the new vision, and he has the possibility to have another vision. And but I cannot guess for how long that could continue.
Okay, my last question. This is the question for the Russian man.
Okay.
So in the epilogue, you write that the future generations of Russians will be ashamed of the war started by Putin. Do you really believe in that, or do you think that after Putin there will be another Putin and nothing will change from the Russian perspective, Russian people perspective?
You know, I'm 100% sure in that because we all see that Russians do not believe in that, in all those imperialistic values. We don't see long lines of Russians who want to be volunteers and who want to go to the front line and die for the great empire. No. During the first year, no one wanted to go to the war, and that's why Prigozhin started recruiting prisoners. These were the only people willing to go.
But maybe it's not because of
now we have money as the only driver. Mm-hmm. Only people who need to pay for their loans, and they are offered a lot of money, much more than they can earn. So Russia is a very cynical country. Now it's about the money. So can it remain some kind of crazy empire? No, because no one believes in that. And there is really very huge gap between, moral and ideological gap between, especially that KGB group, but to speak broadly about the Soviet generations, about people who were raised in Soviet Union and the younger ones. I have very striking example. It's not about politics, and that's why it could be reliable. That's the result of the. It's a pre-war survey made by independent Russian polling agency, and there was a question about LGBT, and if we take people older than 60% of them said death penalty. They want to kill them all. Mm-hmm. And if we take younger generation, younger than 40, 60%, the same amount, want equal rights. Mm-hmm. They are ready to legalize same-sex marriages. So that's the gap in values between the Soviet people and the people who were raised by internet, who don't have all that Soviet values and Soviet background. So I have no doubts that after Putin, it's just impossible to reproduce that way of thinking, and definitely the next generations will be ashamed and will accept the fact that that's a shameful, aggressive war, and they will denounce it.
Well, you've just said that nobody wanted to fight against Ukrainians by himself, but maybe some people still support this war, like from the political perspective. If you ask me, I don't want to fight, but the war is okay for Russia, for our goals.
People are different. Mm-hmm. We don't have proper statistics. We cannot, but I think it's more or less a fact that the majority of people are the passive majority, are the apathetic majority who are scared or who prefer to pretend that nothing is happening. They are not for them, they were not dreaming of this war before it started. They had they want to enjoy their life much more than they want to go to the war or to send their kids or brothers or fathers to the war.
What is your hope when you can go back to Russia without any sentence?
Obviously, after Putin's regime collapses, which is after his death. But I think it's yeah, you're right that it's really complicated. That's not exactly the one-man problem. We remember that like historically, Soviet Union collapsed soon after Stalin's death. But actually, it took 40 years after Stalin's death for Soviet Union to be over. So it can happen within decades. I believe that the first, it's like I believe that the generation of Russians who's going to be born after the end of the war will be free of that imperialist disease. So it will happen. But I'm optimistic, but I'm realistic that it's not going to happen soon.
Okay, thank you very much.